if you isolate the violent criminals, would you change the prison environment for those guys? And this is, I don't know what the percentage of people who are locked up that fall into this category, but it's not life sentence people, but it is violent felons that do have a chance to get out of prison. And basically, the environment that those people are in, would you change that?
Look, first of all, I had a son who went to prison. So if you think, or jail. So if you think that I don't care about inmates, I want to preface this because
but I guess
I had my own son who went to my own jail. So if you want to know how you treat your inmates, put your own kid in your own jail.
Yeah. But I guess
fortunately, I treated him good. However, to your point, I do think there should be harsher, because right now, it's like a club for them.
Yeah.
They're used to being around other guys, and there's no responsibility, no bills to pay. They can come in and out of prison, and they go into it. I would love to see a harsher sentence for those who have hurt other people, especially sex offenders.
Mm-hmm.
As far as I'm concerned, sex offenders, you should throw away the key.
Yeah.
I mean, they should never. They are do more damage than physical violence.
Yeah. I mean, to me, if you separate violent from nonviolent, the nonviolent criminals, I think it makes sense to put them in an environment that's similar to what you have now, where there are certain things afforded, certain, if you want to call them human rights focuses. Not that violent criminals don't or shouldn't have some level of that, but I do think like a radical revamp or reform of how violent felons are jailed is necessary. And to me, like, this is probably going to come across as crazy, or people are going to throw a fit in the comments, but whatever. I think putting them in almost like a I'm trying to think of the name of the book that I can't think of it. It's an older book. It'll come to me, but almost putting them on like a fucking deserted island where you're on your own. And like
I think they were onto something with Australia way back in the day.
Well, yeah, I mean, your only option to survive is to get along, because to me the thing that I just don't understand about that environment is that there's so much free time and ability to be ingenuitive in a negative way, and to hurt each other and to separate. Like, I don't get why in that environment there's this weird separation by race. Like that baffles me. But again, in that environment, you got people who obviously are willing to be violent, even with the consequence of spending time in there. And those people, statistically tend to, recidivism wise, it's through the roof. Like it's a revolving door. And so obviously that isn't enough of a consequence to keep them from recommitting the crimes that got them there in the first place. So how do you then organize an environment where it does actually incentivize them and make them say, dude, I don't want to come back here?
Well, look at Bukele in El Salvador. I mean, that may be an extreme, but those are violent criminals.
I'm not familiar with what's the environment like there.
Oh, you see them where they're bringing them in. They got their heads down. They shave their heads. Yeah. They got them in these boxers. Half the time, no shirt on. I mean, they treat them like they basically have preyed on citizens.
Yeah.
So they treat them like an animal almost.
Yeah.
But guess what? Those people hate. I mean, if they ever get out, I don't think they ever want to go back.
Is the recidivism rate there really low?
I don't even know what the recidivism rate is, but he cleaned up his streets, El Salvador is where MS-13's from.
Yeah.
La Mara Salvatrucha.
Yeah.
That's where they're from. And until he came in there, that gang was running that country.
Yeah.
But it was because of the way they held their inmates. I want to touch on the race thing, because when we were doing 60 Days In, I got hammered because in the West, race is a big issue. Probably here too, but in the West, it's whites, blacks, Hispanics, and natives primarily. And people were angry, like, what are you doing? I said, well, first of all, it's not us. We're not doing it. We're not segregating anybody. But second of all, the race is actually what keeps the violence down. no violence. They don't tolerate violence that's not sanctioned. They keep each other in check, because if you get a bunch of people for a lot of these people that go to prison, it's because they lack self-discipline or they have behavioral issues and they outburst. If you just threw a bunch of men in there with high testosterone in there, you'd have violence every day. But when you start, the races start controlling their own races, it starts to limit the violence substantially. I'm not an advocate for it. I'm just telling you the reality of.
Well, yeah, it's interesting to me that it seems like in most prisons, that's how it ends up being. And again, it's self-imposed.
You can go back in the Midwest and the East Coast. I don't think it's as much like that. I see a lot of it intermixing with the races.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I've not.
I don't know either. I didn't run it.
Yeah.
But from what I understand, it's a lot more in the West.
Do you think that again, if we isolate violent repeat felons, and you put them in an environment where, say, your cell has nothing in it, right? There's a hole in the ground and a sink, but there's no bed, right? You don't get any clothes, and the temperature is kept cold enough to where you're bordering on hypothermia all the time. The sentence could be very short, because I can tell you, like, the elements and Mother Nature have a profound ability to humble fucking everybody. And being in that environment where you're humiliated with no clothes and you're so fucking cold and uncomfortable that you don't get to sleep on anything, there's no TV, there's no books, there's nothing, and you take whatever the sentence is. I mean, to me, you spend 30 days in that environment, and I would bet that there would be very, very few fucking people that would be willing to go back into that environment. Now, most people are going to hear that and think that it's cruel, it's extreme, it's whatever. But
I think most people would be like, you know what? That makes sense. It's the groups, it's these rights groups that they fly the banner under that are the ones that will sue you at every turn.
Well, so
I don't provide you three. When we had ICE detainees before I became the sheriff, right before. The ICE detainees, the people that were here illegally that were being held by Border Patrol, we had contracted, they were getting 4 sets of clothes. They had to have a barber on staff. Yeah. The Americans got 2 sets of clothes, no barber, no nothing. And so the standards that were implemented on the federal level made it imbalanced. And then you have all these groups that if I do anything out of the ordinary, they sue me.
Yeah.
And that's the problem is, yes, you could implement some harsher circumstances to where people did not want to go back. But unfortunately, just like everything else, like what we see every day, where we have these activist groups that go out and think they speak for everybody, and they fight against anything that is effective.
Yeah, I mean, I guess number one is defining, the law against cruel and unusual punishment. What falls into that category and who defines that or decides that something checks that box as being that? I don't know the answer to that.
Well, it's usually set apart in state statutes.
Yeah.
What the requirements are. I have to give them 2,800 calories a day.
Yeah. I mean, to me, you can do that. I mean, Hell Week as an example, I mean, you get probably close to 10,000 calories a day and you still lose weight because you're so fucking cold all the time. But
look at Sheriff Joe. Sheriff Joe, Maricopa County, back in the day, he said, look, if tents are good enough for our troops, they're good enough for the inmates. So he had Tent City. Yeah. And it was 130 degrees, 120 degrees out. Yeah. Or 100.
I mean, the heat sucks, but the cold is a different level of psychological fucking.
Our jail can get pretty cold sometimes.
Yeah. I mean, but to me, that like, I honestly think that would fix it. I mean, again, 30 days. I mean, because to me, like, if you take a step back and you say, what's the point of prison? Well, it's a consequence, right? It's punishment. So if it doesn't serve that purpose of making somebody feel like they're punished and disincentivize them from going back there, then it's not serving its purpose. It's wasting time and money. To me, that seems like a pretty logical solution. And again, I want to reiterate and caveat it with, I don't think that nonviolent people should be into that category. I would have violent felon prisons and non-violent prisons, and I would have the violent prisons, the people who are cutting people's heads off, or raping people, or assaulting, carjacking, violently robbing old couples. I mean, shit, people like that, put in an environment where that is the case, and I legitimately think that would fix a lot of those people's mentality of saying, you know what, that was fucking terrible, and I don't ever want to go back there again. I really
agree.
do. Yeah.